I think that there are on planet Earth. Remember, we also have various levels of existence. We're like in the middle of some place, but we also have, what we would call elementals, which are they have less dense bodies, and that would include, fairies and those kinds of creatures. And there are also creatures that have never taken physical form, that are, I don't want to necessarily use the term demonic, but they are of the animal kingdom in a way, and an amoral kind of force. And some of these beings have never been human, and yet they exist on a certain level of our perception. So they're vibrating lower, they're lower beings. We're somewhere in the middle. Everything is vibration. They can exist down there in that low vibration. And there are plenty of humans, especially if they're using terrible drugs. I don't mean hallucinogens, I mean, cocaine and crack. If they're using drugs of that nature, they can vibrate as low as demonic beings.
Hey, yo, welcome to the Godcast.
Nothing is as it seems. Nothing. I mean, literally, nothing is as it seems.
We took authority for truth instead of truth as our authority.
The great deception is still to come.
Not every human you see is human.
A lot of us equate our value in life to the things that we have or the things we're able to acquire. And not the things that we're able to pass on.
But just sharing this story allows those people who are just starting out to recognize that there's somewhere to go.
Do you find solidarity within the differences, or do you find division within the similarities?
And it was a battle for my soul.
Worship in a mosh pit.
It's nuck if you buck means the gospel. What's up now?
Welcome to Godcast,
the Goodness Over Darkness podcast.
Here's your host, Emmanuel Kingman.
It's showtime. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Godcast, the Goodness Over Darkness podcast. I'm your host, Emmanuel Kingman, and here with me is the regressor, Mimi.
Are you saying I regress?
I don't know what I'm saying.
I don't know what you're saying either. I don't think that one made sense, but we'll go with it.
We'll
just let it go. There's a lot going on today.
So, alien Mimi. Is that better for you? All right. So on today's episode, we had on special guest Lesley Mitchell-Clarke. And Lesley, she is a past life regressionist, as well as someone who regresses people who have experienced the alien abduction phenomena, and from extra-terrestrial as well as ultra-terrestrial, as well as the MyLab / SSP, which is Secret Space Program, and Super Soldier Programming types of abductions. So this episode is fantastic, and you guys don't want to miss out on this one. I want to thank you all for coming out. It really means a lot to us that you would choose our podcast to listen to and be part of, when there's so much good content out there and available, and you're coming to our podcast. We really want to thank you for that. And since you are here, we would like you to go ahead and hit the like button, comment, share, subscribe, rate, and review, whatever you can do as a free means to help boost the show. It would greatly help us beat the algorithms and get us our show promoted so that more people can see us. So thank you if you could all do that. And if you want to become a Patreon member, you can go to patreon.com/goodness-over-darkness. And there you can sign up and become part of what we are doing over here. And I do want to thank Angie. She donated $20 to the show. So Angie, big shout out to you.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for that, Angie. Your donation is greatly appreciated, and it will be put back into the show. So we don't have any new Patreon members to announce on this episode. So our audience, can you please go check out all of Lesley Mitchell-Clarke's work. Her YouTube channel, ContactTV. You can go there. She's on Facebook. All the links are going to be in the description. Her website right now is just being worked on, so you can't really go there. If anyone wants to join our Bible study, send me an email with the subject Bible study, and I will get you in on that. And stay tuned at the end of the episode for the outro. And there we will get into our analysis of the show. Make sure you check out my website, emmanuelkingman.com. And there's a lot of great info on there, the blog, the pictures, so much stuff on there. So go check that out. And without further ado, here is Lesley Mitchell-Clarke.
Welcome to the Godcast. Cross up on my back, I'm slaying demons. It don't matter what you call that. Searching for the truth, facts are facts until they fall flat. It's looking like a story, man, it's all cap. But it's goodness over darkness, it ain't all bad. I'm at my maker, but I was called back. Emmanuel, show my people they're under a spell. Heaven or hell is free will. I made my choice and now it's well with my soul. I pray the same for you as well. Welcome to the Godcast. Welcome to the Godcast.
Hello, everybody. On today's episode, I have on a guest who specializes in hypnotherapeutic regression. She focuses on individuals who have had extraterrestrial and ultra-terrestrial contact. She is author of the book Intersection, a true story of extraterrestrial contact. Everybody welcome Lesley Mitchell-Clarke to the show. Welcome
Hello.
to the show, Lesley.
I emerged through a smoke screen there. I thought I had a moment.
Well, what an intro.
I know. Smoke machine and all.
Yeah.
It's such a pleasure. Excuse me. Such a pleasure to be here. And I'm really looking forward to chatting with you about all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I am honored to have you here. This is something that I am interested in. This is something that I've studied, but I haven't really brought it to my podcast just yet, this side of it, because of, I guess, some trauma still, wounds of memories and fragmentations of memories that I haven't wanted to explore because my life is so wild and imaginative that you have to give people things in spurts. And I think now is the time and space that I'm releasing the final bit of it that I haven't talked about yet, which is the secret space program or super soldier programming, the SSP. And you are like one of the best people to talk to about this.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, what I can say is that for a few years now, more than 15 years as a master hypnotherapist, I have focused on work with people who believe that they have had, encounters. And, every era has its, I think every era has its type of encounters that are exposed. When you talk about the beginning of ufology, the Betty and Barney Hill time, there's lots of grays, there's lots of genetic harvesting, all this kind of stuff is going on under the Truman Agreement. So now what I seem to be seeing in, among the people that do come to me is the tremendous amount of involvement in what I would have to call the secret space program or black ops or MELAB, or there are any number of terms that refer to a globally militarized collaboration with a variety of ETs, many of whom are benign, because I think the intent is more defensive than offensive.
Okay, that is interesting. I've heard of this, that sometimes, well, maybe not sometimes, but what I've heard is that the military will show up after there's been contact with whatever these ETs are, whether they're aliens from other planets or interdimensionals, however they actually work, that after they come in contact with people is usually when the military or government type of thing steps in to see what was going on. Is that something you're familiar with, or is that just very slight?
Well, the government's involved, And I think what's interesting and actually almost ludicrous is that we have two parallel space programs. We have the space program, the NASA, the tin cans flying to the moon. We have that all going on, but yet there are trillions and trillions of dollars missing from the U.S. budget that has been poured into these additional programs, which I believe really began post World War II, again triggered by the Roswell incident, the living ETs, an agreement with the Zeta Reticulites, and much of this is discussed in great detail in a wonderful book called The Day After Roswell by Colonel Philip Corso, and he was there at Ground Zero when all of this sort of thing happened, and so I think that we're always looking at a variety of phenomena. But today, what I have been seeing is many, many people I would say most of them are not younger than 30 before they come to me, but individuals who have been involved with some type of collaborative, defensive, uh, maybe research-oriented program that involves humanoids in creative and military collaboration with a lot of different beings, even beings that to us are startling to see. There are just like here on planet Earth, there are good reptilians and bad reptilians. There are all kinds of beings, and I'm not really in favor. I'm not really a supporter of the kind of David Icke, fear-based, Queen Elizabeth is a reptilian kind of stuff. I do think that we have been involved in military encounters with rather aggressive reptilian beings, according to one of my dear friends, Captain Randy Kramer, and some of the other secret SSP survivors, if you will. But on the other hand, we have treaties with some reptilian beings. Do you recall ever hearing about Paul Hellyer? He just passed away not too long ago, a couple years ago. Anyway, he was at one time the secretary of the Minister of Defense in Canada, and he was also the vice premier of Ontario. So he was very deeply involved in Canadian politics, every aspect of it, especially the military part. And not too long before he passed away, he told me that to his knowledge, the Canadian government, which means also the U.S. government, the Canadian government was engaging with somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 different species of benevolent ETs. So, it's we've really been treated like fragile children in this whole ridiculous secret space program suppressing this information. We have a right to know. And we do know because it's the common is the wrong, it's the everyday people of the world who are having these dramatic encounters and sightings, and who have experienced working as, cadets in the, SSP. So I think now really that disclosure, probably out of frustration with dealing with the governmental heads who are, or the governmental pinheads, whatever, out of frustration, disclosure is a grassroots movement now. It's happening through programs like yours.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're part of it. I have a little expression I love to use. You're midwives of disclosure. I believe we will see it in our lifetime, but we are indeed the way showers.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I was actually, I have these spiritual gifts, this psychic telepathic ability that I hear things as I am listening to different things. It was interesting. I heard you talking about Paul Collier before.
Hellyer, yeah. Oh,
Hellyer, yeah, sorry. And what I heard was 87 was the number that popped in my mind as you were
Okay.
saying what you said. And there was there's just all sorts of interesting things. Like I was told that just a couple weeks ago that we are disclosure. Podcasting is disclosure.
It
That
is. It
yeah,
is.
yeah.
That's
There's a
what's
reason
happening.
why it's YouTube is censoring things and social media censoring things, but podcasts are not censored, and
No.
they want people to go there. They're like, yeah, go listen to these people. Go over there, find out what's going on. And it's hard, you got to sift through some nonsense, but even that nonsense may trigger things in someone remembering their own experience. So it's not totally for naught, even if it is nonsense.
Indeed. And, even in the milieu of mainstream television, if you look at the programming now, I mean, like when I was a kid, and I'm so effing old, I mean, when dinosaurs roamed the earth back when I was a kid, I mean, maybe we had the Twilight Zone, we had a few, and my God, when Star Trek came on the air in 1967, oh my God. So that was what we had. Now, every station is loaded with spirit investigations, UAP investigations, ancient alien investigations. It's so people are they're really waking up. If they weren't waking up and demanding this kind of programming on mainstream media, they wouldn't be showing it,
Right,
because
exactly.
that's all about money. I mean, that's the big money network program.
Yeah, they're tapped
And
into our consciousness, especially through this MyLab thing. They tap into our
mhm,
consciousness. They know what we're generally thinking, and that's what they tend to then Hollywood makes, or Netflix, whatever. The entertainment industry starts making music, starts making TV shows, movies, all these things about what is in our collective consciousness.
mhm.
So, I mean, it's weird to think that, oh yeah, I had that thought, and then 6 months later it's a TV show. But we're not the only ones having these thoughts. It's being shared amongst a lot of us, and that's
Exactly.
why it's happening. It's put out into the ether, into the
Yeah.
cloud, essentially, and
Yeah.
then it's made into fruition.
Indeed. Well, thoughts are things,
Right.
and it's not unusual, even in the scope of the film industry, to see maybe 3 films that come out at the same time that have a very similar theme.
Right.
So the ideas are in fact floating around, and I think that was very accurate what you just said. Actually, very
Oh,
accurate.
awesome. Well, I'm glad that I'm sending some accurate information out here.
You
Okay.
are.
Okay, so you talked about Roswell.
Mm.
Now, are you familiar with L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons? Their little occult practice that they did to open up, was finishing Aleister Crowley's ritual that opened up time and space just a few months prior to the Roswell incident?
Well, I'm not surprised by that at all, but those guys, I even they're just dabblers. They were dabblers. I don't think that I think that most evolved beings who are engaged in intergalactic space travel already have complete knowledge of how to open a vortice and close it, and that this is how intergalactic space travel really happens. Either it happens through what we would call wormholes or vortices or whatever, or it's done through a kind of astral projection. Many beings can simply travel
Right.
etherically, and they engage with others. And then once we get to a high vibrational level, there really is no everybody's in a kind of a light body, if you will.
Right.
So I just without gosh, I just think L. Ron Hubbard was a master charlatan
Hmm.
and a manipulator and a deeply evil man who destroyed many, many, many lives. A
Right.
megalomaniac,
Yeah.
so an unstable individual. Aleister Crowley, I wouldn't say that about. I don't think he was unstable at all. I think he had an agenda.
Hmm.
And but they may well have opened up. So I mean, Aleister Crowley was doing that all the time, opening up
Right.
gateways. That was his thing. So, um, was it connected to Roswell? Well, the only reason why I would say no to that is because what I have heard from sources is the Roswell crash. It wasn't one crash; it was actually three, and that our military had brought down these craft with experimental sonic weapons.
Oh, wow. I haven't
Yeah,
heard that.
yeah, that is what I had heard. So they were just doing a flyby. And I think, we have to get over our global amnesia and realize that we have been engaging with other beings uh, since the dawn of time, and that we ourselves are the hybrids. We're the hybrids,
Yeah,
you
the
know,
human body.
we are. And now we're trying to, it is our divine right to have our full genetic code back
Right.
and to be able to ascend where we need to ascend to without any inhibitors that were put on us genetically.
Right.
So
Okay.
I believe that's the era that we're in. And now, although I don't currently take any hallucinogenics at this at my advanced age, but back in the day, I did an awful lot of experimenting with uh, with LSD and mushrooms, and I think for a time we can be elevated to a tremendously high vibrational level and can communicate with otherworldly beings, interdimensional beings. But the problem is it's not sustainable or really that controllable. So
Right.
it's a way. It is a way. I don't put down anybody's search. Everybody is entitled to try what they wish to try. It's a way, but for myself, if I'm thinking about, remote viewing or doing anything, for me, meditation is the thing that it's slow and steady. It's like the tortoise, it's like the tortoise and the hare. It's a
Right.
slow, steady process, but I have been a heavy meditator for 40 years, and
Okay.
I can really remote view and do some of these engage in some of these disciplines that just come. So we have the capability to evolve right here. And the message I keep hearing, if if we want to concentrate on a specific message that I keep hearing through my clients from benevolent ETs, it's clean up your own backyard.
Right. We have to
Clean
do it
up
ourselves.
your mess. I think I really do that there is a, Gene Roddenberry like Federation of Planets of like-minded civilized beings in our part of the galaxy, and they would love to welcome us, but look at us. It's like, they're like the nice family that lives above the biker bar. Look at us. We're killing each other. Children are being killed. People are sick, and all of this is a financially greed-driven, elitist kind of way that we, I believe, learned to operate from the Anunnaki, our progenitors. And
Mm.
until we truly love our fellow man, until we adopt at least some of the philosophy of the various avatars that have come in, Jesus, Muhammad, that these are avatars that have come in that have tried to show us the direction to take to evolve, and we have refused it over and over and over again.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have experienced the alien abduction phenomenon. We were talking a little bit before we started here, and I experienced that my entire life. And then through meditation and psychedelics, I started remembering different things. I started breaking out of whatever was uh, memory blocks that were put on me. And then after a while of cleaning up myself, of first it started with exercise and then my own
Mhm.
thoughts and actions. And after doing all that cleaning up, the music I listened to, then Jesus saved me in a way that Christians describe being saved by Christ. And then the abduction phenomena stopped. At
Mhm.
least the malevolent one, where I felt things were watching me. I was a grown man who's very large. I exercise. I've been in a lot of hand-to-hand combat. I was in prison, so I can take care of myself in that way. But I was still a grown man who was afraid of the dark. That I felt presences watching me. And then once Jesus saved me, I didn't feel that anymore. It stopped happening. I stopped being zapped. I actually have had dreams recently where I've called on the name of Jesus, where something was like trying to get me to give over my daughter, and I was about to like fight them, and I called on Jesus, and a safe fell, a man-sized safe fell out of the sky, landed on this thing, these things, and just and they were gone. So it was a very wonderful, it was a funny, you know, symbolic thing that Jesus was keeping me safe. He dropped a safe. It was like a cartoon like thing. So I can very much understand how we are all supposed to be acting and like he was. He was the example, and he was the way for us out of, like you're saying, out of what we are doing into what we can do and become. So it's a very simple thing when everyone starts to look at it that way, that, oh, let's just clean up our own act, and then we can get on with life. You know, we don't have to be stuck in this state of
We don't. You're right. It's self-created and self-perpetuated. We are manifesting in the hologram. We're manifesting the reality that we envision. And in the third density, you know, obviously it's the third density. Change is harder. And progress is harder, but that's why we're here. This is the cruel school. We're here to learn and evolve. And the souls that are here, like yourselves, we're here for a reason. I'm here to be here now, because this is a significant turning point in the history of humankind. This is a big turning point. We have, and you can see it. You can feel it. That you know, the whole world now is focusing on the immoral behavior of one man, and this didn't happen with Hitler. The world turned away, so things are different now. They've already changed. The pandemic has changed us.
Right.
Our concern for our fellow man is different than it was. So there have been world events of recent times that have indeed stimulated the how shall I say it? Stimulated evolution, I guess, is the only way to say it.
And I think that the media manipulation and the government processes, I think them tightening has actually made it more obvious to people that we should just be trusting our intuition, that we should be caring for one another instead of freaking out about everything that is on the TV, that we should try to understand one another. It's really, I don't know if it's being done purposely in order to do what I'm saying, or if they're trying to just tighten things. I think it's kind of
Well,
both.
they're exposing themselves. They're,
Exactly.
you know, what's happening is ultimately, ultimately the false gods fall.
Right.
The false gods of greed.
Yeah.
Ultimately these things will fall, and because awareness is increasing every single day. Yes, we have incredible, polarity going on right now. We have some, pockets of very uneducated people who are reactionary. We have people who are so highly evolved that they're not really involved in worldly business. I mean, that's one of the interesting things, as far as what I've heard about planet Earth, is that we are one of the few planets that has such a diversity of people and behaviors. I think many other planets are more sort of socialist, more like Sweden. They don't have, maybe they don't have ethnic groups, but they certainly don't have, the variety of different awarenesses that we have on this planet, different energies. So this is sometimes I have heard this planet referred to as the grand experiment, because it is unique in this way, that different groups of extraterrestrial beings have been responsible for contributing their genetic material to create what we are and who we are.
Right. Okay. All right. So now I want to get into the SSP a little bit and my experiences. So beforehand, and I'll pull it up for the listeners. Before we started, I asked you about different markings that I have on my body,
Mhm.
and it was, quite to my surprise. Well, not necessarily quite to my surprise, because I had an understanding myself, but you said it before I even asked the question, and I'm going to bring it up here, is that you think these markings I have on me are possibly uh, part of the MyLab
Mhm.
uh, experiments. So I have these red markings, like these are right over my heart. Then I got these three. This is the other side of my chest, and one here, one here. They're clearly different than the freckles that I have there. They're
Yeah,
very,
these are more red.
yeah, they're
Mhm.
red.
Mhm.
I have salt. I have completely smooth spots on either side of my cheek where I didn't grow a beard for a long time because it was very noticeable, these patches. And then once I started researching this, I started to f- uh, find out about the different implants, and maybe that's something that would cause these patches of hair not to grow. It's completely smooth as if nothing can grow there, and you can see like right in the middle there's a little dot there, and
Mhm.
if you touch it you can feel something inside of this one. You can really see right in the middle, you can
Mhm.
feel something inside of there. And then on the other side I have one as well, and then I have one on my foot that makes my toe go haywire at times. So I just wanted to show that for the audience, because when I asked you about that, you were talking about, well, why don't you just explain to me the difference between the alien implants versus the SSP, and why you
Oh,
think that
okay.
mine were part of the SSP?
All right. Well, many of the ETs, when they're communicating with individuals, because this is all about communication, it's important to remember that many ETs are telepathic. They operate telepathically. They don't necessarily use language. Maybe they can, but they choose to be telepathic. So,
Oh,
what?
so I'm sorry, do they target people with bloodlines with telepathic
Yes,
abilities?
yes. In a
Okay.
word, yes. Because, I mean, for example, say you're Jane Goodall and you're down there in the darkest Africa and you discover a new type of primate that has a, voice box that has morphed and can actually make words.
Right, you're gonna
Now,
follow them more.
wouldn't you want to spend your time working with those primates that can actually communicate with you?
Yeah.
Rather than in this whole group. So it's kind of like that. And of course, people have a very varying degrees of psi ability, but one way to ensure that you're going to find people that have it is to be tracking bloodlines from the beginning, particularly through the matrilineal bloodlines.
Yeah. The
So
mitochondrial, the mother.
indeed, so we have generational contact going on, and it's because the beings that are evolved, they want to be able to speak with us, and telepathically, if at all possible. So that's one of the reasons that I believe is one of the reasons that ETs do use sometimes devices, implants. Now, the thing about the implants, if they are coming from an ET source, is they're usually pretty organic. In other words, they may, if they're removed, they will dissolve immediately to exposure to the air. They may run away. They may be hard to catch. They actually may move. So now, when you are talking about implants that come from the results of the experimentations, often the very ill-advised experimentations of the secret space program and MeLab and these other things. You're talking about a more crude type of step-up transformer. That's why you're getting so much EMF, so much electrical activity from these implants that are, in the chest area and whatever. They are meant to stimulate some aspect of your neurological system that will in fact then stimulate PSI ability. That's my take on it, and that's why they're there. And if you had an MRI, which you probably shouldn't, because there might be some really serious electromagnetic effects from what's in your body, but these things could be seen. You know, these things could be seen. They're very small, but they could be seen.
Yeah, it's interesting because I had atrial fibrillation at the age of 19, and I've told the story on my podcast before, but some of my listeners may not have heard it, some new listeners. So I'll tell it again briefly. Is I was drinking too much the night before. I woke up, I couldn't breathe very well. When I sat up, when I stood up, it got even worse. So I had to lay down. My mother, my girlfriend take me to the hospital. I'm in the hospital, and during my stay, they find out I have AFib and my heartbeat is off. So they come in with the paddles to shock me to get my heart back aligned. As soon as the doctor walks in with those paddles and I lay eyes on it, my heart, it's like something sent an electrical shock in my heart and fixed it. Because I always said that I thought that maybe something would happen to maybe I would have died had they used that on me. And is that something that you've heard of before? That's these things can send electrical shocks.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. They're human made. They're probably made at Hughes Skunk Works for all we know. You know, this is man-made stuff. It's imperfect. It's designed for a temporary result with little regard for the human host.
Right.
Right? So, and I'm sure, have you ever taken an EMF meter and just run it around on your body to
I
see?
have not.
I would do that. I
Okay.
would do that to see if there are ongoing EMF emanations coming out of these small devices.
Okay, I will definitely check that out because when I was when I was filling vending machines before I moved to Georgia, before COVID happened, I was someone who filled vending machines, and I was just telling you, and I've said it before, like briefly, that I used to get shocked like 200 to 300 times a day by touching different metals, walking around. Every time I got out of my truck, I would get shocked. Every time I would go shut the door, every time I'd open the door to my truck, as well as every time I opened and shut the door when I had the key in my hand to open the door of the vending machine every single time. And I used to do this hundreds of times a day, just open it. And as soon as the key touched the lock, boom, I would be shocked. And I used to have to try to ground myself by like quickly touching something metal that would just give me a brief shock rather than get the full on, like holding it there.
Right.
I mean, at some days it was very painstaking, but when it was raining, it wouldn't happen.
Right.
So that was something that was strange. It was like the rain somehow affected the electromagnetic field.
It would, I think that's really interesting what you described, but have you ever had the experience, I mean, aside for these implants, but this happens to me all the time. Have you ever had the experience where if you get upset or something is going on, you get around your computer or any other sensitive Wi-Fi oriented device that it can just go crazy? Has that ever happened to you?
I'm not. I mean, I've had weird things, but not particularly with my emotions attached to it. I don't. I haven't had that experience.
That happens to me all the time. Just like what you're talking about, but au natural. There used to be I was at one time, I was one of Stephen King's publicists in New York, and they had a phone there, and this was just, I mean, this is so primitive. It was practically before the internet. We barely had it. So this was a real, office phone in the traditional sense, but it was very fancy because it could switch to different languages. But you had to go through a process. So if I was upset, and it was a very stressful gig, New York publicist, stressful gig. If I was upset and I got near that phone, it would start talking to me in different languages.
Wow. Wow.
And I'm always screwing up my computer just by being upset. So, well, anyway, the idea is, we are like little power, we're like batteries, we're like little power generators walking around, which is of course why, I know we're not here to talk about, research into the paranormal as far as ghosts and such, but entities that are earthbound, they're always looking for an energy source.
Yeah.
And, that's to manifest. And so that's a lot of what happens when people go in to do ghost investigations. They're providing an energy source for the beings to manifest in some kind of semi-physical way.
Well, it's interesting. I've been detoxing my body from parasites, natural parasites, and also the metal by using zeolite. So I wonder if these shocks have stopped because of my dissolving of these heavy metals that have been implanted in me.
Totally possible. Totally complete. And remember, you're only looking at what you can see.
Exactly. Yeah.
There may be other more significant implants that were put there in more of a surgical process. Who knows? We'd have to get an X-ray would be okay. It's just you can't have an MRI if you've got stuff that's generating a current.
Right. Okay.
So,
Well, it's interesting, and I'm looking forward to our session where you're
oh
going to
yes,
regress me a bit, because
I am.
that is something that So I was telling you that I kind of broke out by smoking weed, popped open my crown chakra, and then doing psychedelics and meditating. I started to remember things, and I really shut down that part of myself because I started to experience. Now, I mean, it could be that they were trying to make me paranoid, but I started to experience things like an anonymous letter got sent to me. I started to experience, like, I heard a window shut, and then I go in my daughter's bedroom and her window's open just a little bit, but it shouldn't have been open. There were pink fingerprints on the ceiling of my bathroom. My car was unlocked and the windows were put down. I started experiencing different things like this when I was doing this, and I was living with a girlfriend who I think was a handler, and she was someone in the military, and I'll get into that in the outro for the audience. That's not too important to the show here, but I was experiencing all these different things, and I think that it was because I was becoming aware, and I wasn't supposed to be becoming aware yet. And it was like I was breaking out of this box that I was put into, and uh, so I stopped experimenting with looking at my memories and looking into my psyche, because not only was it freaky to remember those things and to be on those ships again and be with different beings and military and seeing people I knew on these ships as well, but I was also experiencing things happening in my physical life that were trying to deter me for whatever reason. Is that something that you're also familiar with, this gang stalking or, paranoia type of behavior that these military groups or humanoids that are going to pretend to be humans are then doing to us so that we stop looking into this?
I think that happens. I think that happens. I know that the experiencers that I work with have a lot of things happen to them when they start to wake up and remember stuff. And much of it looks a lot like what you are describing. Odd noises, maybe moved stuff, maybe something with the car. And I wonder, is it beings just trying to, stake their territory, as it were, trying to use fear to manage you? Because remember, the big bugaboo, the thing that makes everything stop and not progress, is fear. Trump used it, fear. And so I think it's very possible, because, the worst things I've ever heard about have not been from at the hands of the ETs, of which there are many. The worst things that I have heard about are happening from what we would consider elements of our government and the secret space program.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
Human beings. We have no trouble being horrible to each other.
Yeah.
It's that's a fact. So anything is possible, and I have no doubt that to a sensitive person like yourself, they could do subtle things that would engender fear,
Right.
which would slow down your evolution.
Right, and I don't think that a physical intimidation, like someone coming up to me and confronting me,
Yeah.
would have
No.
been a good thing for them because
No.
I was someone I fought a lot, and
Yeah.
they would have known that. And I went to prison. I was in state prison. I knew how to take care of myself physically. And if someone would have done that, well, then there would have been a physical alteration, and I wouldn't have kept my mouth shut.
Mhm.
I'm not someone who is, I'm a loudmouth, so to
Mhm.
speak. So
Yeah.
that type of tactic wouldn't have worked, but the paranoia tactic
Mhm.
would have
Mhm.
worked on me at one time because then I would have shut down and gotten the shell. But the more that I spoke out, the more courage I had, the
Mhm.
less power they had over me.
That's right.
And then what started happening was when I was meditating down in Georgia, I would cast out this light. I could feel this presence of light and energy that I was sending out. And as soon as I did it, I would hear military helicopters going over my house, and I
Mhm.
would project
Mhm.
myself onto the helicopters and interact with them. Well, it happened for a while until, and I know you were on with Andy Rouse on the Deep Share one time.
Mhm.
He's a good friend of mine. We
Oh.
do a show together, Worship in the Storm.
Mhm.
And so on his episode, he came on to talk about the Anunnaki. And I actually, I told yeah, I experienced this and I project myself onto the ship and I mess with them and
Mhm.
I do different things and it stopped. As soon as I said it out
Mhm.
loud, I don't know if they realized that I was actively doing it, that I've
Mhm.
strengthened myself to that
Mhm.
point, but they really backed off once I said that out loud.
See, there, it's again, it's fear.
Mhm.
Internalizing fear. They can't come up and pummel you in person, as you well know. It's not going to be an intimidation like that. If they use intimidation, it is the wielding of fear.
Right.
And they can figure out very easily what scares you.
Yeah.
As far as, the security of your daughter, the other things that you mentioned, that's easy stuff to figure out. So, but once you, and knowledge is power. Like there's still a lot of unknown things about your experiences, but once you begin to have complete recall, you're invincible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and having the relationship with Jesus that I have, having that invincible mentality that I not only have, but my daughter has too.
Hmm.
Now I am in complete faith and trust that nothing can happen. I've actually faced the beast of revelation in a psychedelic trip, which I
Hmm.
talk about pretty often,
Hmm.
and I laughed in its face. It roared at me, the mouth of a lion, the claws of a bear.
Hmm.
It
Hmm.
roared at me, and I laughed because I was like, "Oh, I have a physical body. You're only going to trying to scare me, and now that I
Hmm.
know you can't do anything but scare me, now it's funny. Now I'm above you." And
Hmm.
what you're saying right here just goes exactly with that.
Hmm. And I think that there are on planet Earth. Remember, we also have various levels of existence. We're like in the middle of some place, but we also have, what we would call elementals, which
Mm,
are they have less dense bodies, and that would include, fairies and those kinds of creatures. And there are also creatures that have never taken physical form that are, I don't want to necessarily use the term demonic, but they are of the animal kingdom in a way, and an amoral kind of force. And some of these beings have never been human, and yet they exist on a certain level of our perception. So they're vibrating lower, they're lower beings. We're somewhere in the middle. Everything is vibration. They can exist down there in that low vibration. And there are plenty of humans, especially if they're using terrible drugs that, I don't mean hallucinogens, I mean, cocaine and crack. If they're using drugs of that nature, they can vibrate as low as demonic beings.
yeah, and I think that part of the my lab uh maybe it's also other aliens, but they get these people addicted to drugs because we have these missing memories, we have these traumas, and we just don't feel right. And what ends up happening is drug addiction happens. So when I was 14, I saw a UFO, a spinning disc-shaped saucer that had 3 different colors on it, and it was moving like a helicopter, but it was silent, and it was just this moving disc. And I was actually rolling a blunt while we were sitting at the local schoolyard. It was like a Friday night or Saturday night, and I was rolling the blunt. I'm looking down. My 3 buddies are looking up, and they see it. And then that's all it really was. Like, it came close to us as my buddy pointed it out to me, and I looked up, and that's kind of all it was. And then, like, it went away. Now, maybe there was missing time there. I don't think that there was necessarily, but the weird thing about it is that Monday in school, my friends, they didn't remember seeing it, but I clearly remembered it. And it was weird to me that they didn't remember it. Now, that was when I was 14. About a month or 2 later, I get this letter from quote unquote Freemasons that were telling me, I could join if I sent them $20 to some PO box or whatever. I didn't do it. And in that letter, it said, if you sign up, we've been watching you, and we see how good you are at sports, and you could be a really good force for good. But if you don't do it, you're gonna have a terrible life. And what happened is, then I became addicted to drugs. Shortly after that, I started using Percocet, which I became addicted to for 10 years. And I spiraled out until I was in prison for burglarizing pharmacies. And I was suicidal during this time. A lot of different things happened. My daughter's mom became addicted to heroin. And there was a lot of different things that happened. So exactly as this letter stated, if I didn't participate, then things would go downhill. And it really happened that way. And I think that all these events are connected, that UFO sighting, there was probably something more to it that I'm not remembering. And then for whatever reason, my friends didn't remember it, but I was able to. I don't know why. And maybe they were just purposely not remembering.
Probably.
And then receiving that letter, and then the drug addiction that occurred shortly thereafter. So is that something that you think is a possibility, that they can induce drug addiction through these traumas and unrecalled memories from the conscious, but the subconscious still holds, so the conscious doesn't feel whole?
Well, I do know that many individuals from this secret space program, once they wake up when they're 18 or whatever, and they've gone 20 years back in time, they have commonly a lot of drug problems. It's a common thing with the secret space program, veterans, when they come back, 20 and back, when they're regressed to age 18 or whatever it is. That is quite common. One thing I would say about what you're telling me is, I believe ultimately it's a universe of free will. We can go along with love and goodness and the high ideals, or we can choose to experiment or experience something else. Now, as horrible as all of this sounds, your addiction and imprisonment, I have no doubt that you have incredible compassion for people who have been through anything like that. And maybe, just maybe, that part of your journey, because you're still a very young guy, that part of your journey was something that you wrote in to your life contract so that you would emerge with incredible compassion and the ability to understand what human beings have been through and the nature of addiction and what it feels like to be in prison. And maybe these things are now primary to your work in the world. I mean, I can't say that. I'm just throwing it out there because, in addition to all this, work with experiencers, I do an awful lot of past life regressions and interlife regressions. And interlife regressions have to do with the time when we first sort of arrive in heaven, or if you wish to call it that, and we go through certain processes, and we also make decisions about whether or not we're going to come back into physical life on earth and how that's all going to happen. So those of us that write difficult programs for ourselves are interested in a escalated learning program.
Yeah, well, I would definitely agree whether it was me that signed up for it or I just signed up for God's, whatever, I'll
Yes.
experience whatever, however it works. I definitely agree that that was part because I can relate to so many different people.
Mhm.
I even had sexual abuse trauma as a young child,
Mhm. Mhm.
about 7 years old, 5, 6, 7, around there. So I can relate to so many different things and I can help people get out of those phases. So I definitely agree that
You
that was
can.
that has definitely bolstered me to where I am,
Yes.
and it is why I'm doing what I'm doing. Had I not gone through that, I would have just been a mundane person living a mundane life.
That's another way to look at it, and you now have the tools that you need to help people heal.
Right.
You can't do it without compassion. I mean, to look at me, I don't know what you mean, but I at one time had a terrible cocaine addiction.
Mm.
I also was incarcerated for a time.
Mm.
I then later, because of medical, stupidity, I had an OxyContin problem just because of back pain that escalated. So I had to get off of that. And so, you never know what goes on with people, but I know that I signed up for the tough school
Yeah.
because if you think about it, yes, I work a lot in regression and such, but the bulk of my work is in really clinical mainstream therapy. So I am helping people with everything you could possibly imagine. And many of these things I've been through on some level. So I don't know. I think for me, it was important to have those experiences that might now be interpreted as negative. But to
Yeah.
me, it's just information in my hard drive.
Yeah, yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I resonate and relate with that. It's so hard to go from, being the victim to then being thankful that you experienced that because now
Mhm.
I can free others that may look at themselves as victims. It's a very hard thing to get over, but once you get over that hump, it's very rewarding. And
See,
I,
yeah.
I I do a lot of mentoring or talk therapy with people. I talk
Mhm.
them through their problems, and after we finish talking, they tell me that they feel better, that they feel unburdened.
Mhm.
It's almost as if I am taking out the darkness in them and sending it up to God, and they are like I'm this conduit where I'm just like exposing the darkness in them to themselves.
Mhm.
Really,
Mhm.
it's not necessarily me doing anything, but them feeling comfortable because I open up about
Yes.
all my experiences.
And you create when you are, counseling these people, you are creating a safe, loving environment. So
Right.
when the truth comes out, it comes out in a loving way filled with acceptance, which was the very nature of all the great prophets and avatars, including Jesus of Nazareth.
Mm.
So I think that you are just walking in the master's footsteps.
Oh, well, thank you. That's what I'm trying to do. I really I look to him. I want to live my life like him. I want to be able to express love to those who hate me,
Mhm.
and I want God's will to be done, even if that means not necessarily. I don't want to be hung by a cross. That's
Mhm.
that's not what I'm saying. But I want to be able to allow life to happen and observe it while it's happening, and not react to it while it's happening.
Indeed. And remember that Jesus's philosophy was tempered by a real big worldview. You know that there's very strong evidence that, during the missing period of time before he reemerged in his ministry, he went with his uncle, Saint Joseph of Arimathea, and he traveled through India and Tibet, and they have records in the Tibetan
Right, Isa.
monasteries. They refer to him as Isa. And so he absorbed you know, meditation, Vedic health practices. Probably it was the most advanced on the earth at the time.
Right.
And then he also traveled with his uncle, again, Saint Joseph of Arimathea, to the silver mines in the north of Ireland. So when Jesus finally did return to his ministry, he had experienced mind opening things. He'd engaged in Celtic mysticism. He had learned from the Tibetan monks, and yet, his own philosophy was so distilled and so simple. Love your brother as thyself.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really distilled down to that. He wasn't bothered with, he didn't sweat the small stuff. He didn't care what people wore, if they were sick, if they were wealthy, he didn't care. And I especially love, the story of Jesus removing the money changers from the temple. That's always because he was a kick-ass dude. He was a fit young man, and that just sent him over the top. And he said, "That's it." So I love that story because he was in a human form. He was an avatar, an evolved spirit who took human form.
And it's he spoke with.
I don't mean to sound like a dictatorian. I'm sorry. I feel that that's what he was. Everyone is entitled to their own viewpoint. God forgive me for putting it out there like I have the last word. I don't. That's my impression.
Right. Yeah. And, that's what everyone has to have a different understanding and a different role. We're all the body of God, right? We're all the body of Christ. So we all have to play a different role. So the kidney and the heart are two different things. And if one of us is a cell for the kidney, we can't be the same. We won't even really resemble the same thing, but in a way we are the same. But it's the difference is what makes it so beautiful. And what you're saying with the money changers, I love that he flips the table and nobody does anything to him because he speaks with such authority and truth that he speaks to their souls, and their souls know exactly that he's calling out their BS, and they know like, I am doing BS, and I can't even speak out against that.
Well, we are calling out the money changers now.
Yes,
as a global society, we are going to see incredible changes. And imagine, we've had, the thing about all this ET tech that we have free energy. We've had it since the 50s. And we don't need to rely on fossil fuels. People don't need to die in mines digging out coal. And if we simply made that switch, there would be enough jobs for this new technology that we wouldn't experience a societal collapse. Not by any stretch of the imagination. We could transfer to a new clean form of harvesting earth energy. Well, after all, that's what the pyramids are. They are earth energy harvesters, if you will. They are power plants. They're not temples, they're not graves, they are power plants.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like my electric bill will be higher because I use more electricity. Is like what someone in there like turning something that's making it more expensive? No, it's just they want to make us pay more because they just want to pretend like it, and it's a whole mess of things that go on with all that. Go ahead.
Don't they I think my sister experienced, don't they tax you incredibly sometimes if you put solar panels, if you use some kind of alternative? My sister did that, and she lives in California. I live in Canada, obviously. But I think that she was subject to some kind of ridiculous taxation situation by doing that.
I wouldn't doubt that California would do that.
I wouldn't doubt either, right? I wouldn't doubt it either.
They scream for you to add solar panels just so they can tax you on it.
That's right. I think that's exactly what happened. But, unfortunately, in the East Coast, and also in Georgia, it would be too cold. You couldn't do it in Georgia. We can't exclusively use solar panels, which is wonderful. We need additional free energy. And, Tesla was experimenting with it at the turn of the last century, for God's sake. It exists. Let's do it. Let's save our planet. Let's save Gaia. Let's save Mother Nature, for God's sake. We are supposed to be the stewards of the earth, which means caring for the animals. Let's get rid of corporate farming. It's immoral. I mean, there are so many things that need to change, but one thing that gives me a lot of hope, guys, is that when I talk to young people, I mean, well, my kids are 27 and 24, and they and all of their friends have these same ideas.
Right.
So these concepts that, I talked about when they were kids and this and that, it's all gotten through. They don't tolerate elitism. I think I'm just really excited by the changes that we are about to see. And we just have to hold tight and eschew fear, seek information, help each other, and continue the podcasting and everything else that we're doing to wake people up.
Yes, amen to that. So going out here, I do have one more question before we wrap it up.
Is that it? Oh no!
If you have time, I got plenty.
No, unfortunately, I have to go help somebody feel less nervous. So,
Okay. So have you gotten anything in your regressions lately that would suggest that there's going to be events happening very soon that are going to change the world very dramatically?
I have gotten that information. I just don't know what very soon means to beings that live for possibly thousands of years.
That's a good point.
And how imminent, but does it not feel to you guys like things are speeding up?
Absolutely.
Do you have that feeling? I think everyone who's kind of in tune is feeling that. And believe me, with this many people with their minds open, things have to be changing dramatically. And I also think that as horrendous as the COVID pandemic has been and the terrible loss of life, it has also brought true values into better focus. The values of what you do have, your home, the people you love, not focus. We're all workaholics in the Western world, and that's unhealthy. There has to be a balance. So I think that in a certain way, even this awful pandemic can be viewed, can be reframed as an experience that has brought humanity closer to true values.
Yeah. Okay. That is wonderful. I want to thank you for being here. Now,
Oh,
can you tell the listeners where they can find you?
yes, and as I was talking about earlier, my website, which is Lightwork Hypnosis, is having a facelift. Although God knows I should have had it first, but anyway, that's what's happening. And you can always reach me at Lesley Lesley at lightworkhypnosis.com. All one word, all lowercase. I'm also totally available on Facebook, either as Lesley Mitchell-Clarke or Lightwork Hypnosis or our ContactTV. So I can be found, and I would love to, if you just want to ask me a question, if you are feeling isolated, you don't know what's going on, please just, drop me a line. I try to get back to everybody as soon as I possibly can.
All right, that is great. So the final question, this is how I like to end all my discussions, is how do you like to keep yourself grounded in this time of disclosure and with all these different beings here, how do you keep yourself grounded to what you're doing in your physical body and your human life?
Yoga and meditation. That's all I can say. I've been a meditator for 40 years. I meditate in the morning, and then in the evening I'm a transcendental meditator. And then I do yoga at least once a week. And now that physical exercise is very important. And now that the weather's getting a little better, my thing is I love to ride my bike. So I would say everybody needs to drink plenty of water. We need hydration. We're all dehydrated. So I want everybody out there to drink lots of water and just go out and take a walk, breathe in the air, and be glad that you're here and you're alive. And any kind of physical exercise is always a wonderful thing to help preserve the physical meat suit that we're in.
Yes. I love all those answers. All right, so we'll say goodbye to our audience. Goodbye, everybody. Make sure you stay tuned for the outro, and we will see you there.
Thank you.
All right, welcome to the outro, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Mimi and I are both here. Mimi's cracking up because she just finds life hilarious at times.
Find the intro to the outro. It's just funny. That's well.
Yeah, well.
Anyway.
Well, we want to thank you guys for sticking around and listening to us, our banter and analysis at the end. Well, yeah.
Yes, we do.
We do have banter.
Usually just me.
No, yeah, we can go back and forth. And if you are here, again, I would like to ask you to like, comment, share, subscribe, rate, and review, whatever you can do to help boost the show, support us. And it's free to do all those things. So if you could do that, it would be greatly appreciated. And for all those who have done that, I want to thank you so much. It has helped the show grow so much. We have hit 25,000 listens in a little over 11 months, or 25,000 downloads, I'm sorry. And that doesn't include the YouTube channel. So thank you all for participating and helping us achieve that accomplishment. 25,000, even though that's not all that much on a grand scale, to me, it means the world. It's a lot to me.
Ton.
Yeah, 25,000, that's amazing. So thank you all for that. If you want to support the show financially, you can donate either on PayPal or you can become a Patreon member, patreon.com/goodnessOverdarkness.
Excuse me.
Yeah. And you can, there's different things that we offer on there little extras that you can't get anywhere else. So make sure you check out all of our guest stuff, Lesley Mitchell-Clarke, ContactTV on YouTube, and and anything else, is in the description. Now, so let's get into the show a little bit. Now, Mimi, during the show, let me ask you, what was your impression of the show before we get into what I gave a little nugget.
I showed up
on.
late, so I missed the beginning.
You only missed 2 minutes.
Really? That's all? I feel like I missed the whole thing because I was quiet the whole time. Like I didn't know what I missed.
Yeah, we talked about 10 minutes before the show, before we got going.
You caught me in the middle of a note, but hold on.
Okay, well, so I did leave off a little nugget there for the audience, which I'm going to get into in a minute, that an ex-girlfriend of mine was my handler. So I want to kind of lead into that. So, what was your take on our guest?
What I heard her say was that we have to go on a field trip to, we live near Savannah, which is quote unquote the most haunted, one of the most haunted cities, and the best place to get your hands on an EMF reader. So I think we might have to do a little field trip, get our hands on a little EMF reader, and read your body.
Scan me.
Yeah.
Well, I think
that was a good idea.
Yeah.
A good suggestion.
Yeah, it is. But like I said, with all this detoxing I've been doing, especially the amount of zeolite that I've been taking, I hope that it doesn't affect me, because I don't get shocked the same way. I don't hear I used to hear a lot of ringing in my ears. I don't have that anymore since I did this zeolite cleanse. Well, not just the zeolite, but all of them.
I need to start.
Yeah, I haven't been experiencing the same things that I used to. So hopefully that's what's been happening with me, that I got rid of that.
I wanted to get into a little discussion with her, find a way in to talk about how how one starts to remember things, because I don't really have many memories behind, like, I don't know, maybe preteen years. Like I have like little flashes of things like that I knew that we did as a family. Like I have kind of flashes of things that we repeatedly did, but I don't really have specific memories, I don't think.
Well, yeah, that's something.
And when people say like, oh, when I was 2, I did blah, blah, blah. I'm like, how the hell do you remember that?
Yeah, well, that's something
I don't remember that.
We definitely have to get her back on. And
yeah,
she's going to do a regression for me. So maybe we'll record that, and maybe I'll release it as an episode, depending on
maybe on Patreon or something.
Yeah,
Which
depending
was
on what it
also what I was
sounds
going
like.
to say. If she can give me those answers, maybe Patreon would be the place where I might begin to tell my story.
Yeah, that would be a good place for it.
Yeah.
Because everyone on the Patreon, they're all family.
Yeah, I
we
love
talk
all
to them
my
regularly.
all my Patreon, all your Patreon.
Our Patreon.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah. So okay, now that is a good question to get into with her at some point. Now, before I get into what I was going to get into, is there anything else that you wanted to cover in your notes here?
I also liked when she was praising you for, going through what you've gone through makes you able to help others who have gone through the same thing.
Mhm.
And in a weird, effed up kind of way, when I went through my things in a messed up way, I was thankful that somebody else went through it too.
So that you weren't alone.
Right.
Right, because
Right.
it's loneliness is it's
Well,
a great haunting.
everybody's trauma or everybody's, things that happen to them. Sometimes you feel like there's no one that could possibly have gone through that. There's just no one, and people are going to think my story's crazy.
Yeah, but you're not. Your story
Well, I mean,
isn't-
I'm saying anyone in general, anybody's story is crazy or out there or
Right.
far-fetched or lies or,
Right.
all the things that
all that negative
society puts
self-talk.
on you. Yeah, and that you put on yourself.
Yeah.
So in a weird way, it was like, I'm glad that somebody else
Can relate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely feel for you. And when we start to open up about our lives and our past experiences,
Hello.
it is
Hello,
something.
Molly.
It is something that it's
She's
hard.
like, my mom is secretly calling me for comfort.
Yeah.
Right now.
It's hard to step into that and put yourself out there. So knowing that others have experienced it is something that that gives us great comfort, because we know we're not alone then. And that's the point for me of having this relationship with Jesus, is I know I'm never alone. I know he's always there with me, and he's always been there with me. He's never forsaken me. And it gives me great comfort and confidence, and I am invincible because of his presence in me and next to me, and all throughout everything. That gives me the most comfort, and no one could ever take that away from me. And they couldn't scare it away from me. They couldn't make me paranoid. They couldn't make me crazy. None of that is true and real. It was just fear that made me into something. And the confidence and love that he has showed me has just raised me continually and constantly. All right, so I do want to talk about my ex being my handler. It's not something I noticed in the moment. I didn't even have the full memories or anything. It's the reflecting that really brought it out. So I'm not going to mention her name, but she was the girlfriend who helped me be in an adult relationship. She showed me how to be in an adult relationship. There was a lot of things that we did together. We had a great time together. We used to smoke weed and watch Rick and Morty, have fun doing that. We used to go to the gym together and stuff like that. So we had a very good relationship, but she never said, I love you, until the day that she finally moved out. And she moved out because what she told me, she had to move out. She just kept saying is, I have to move out, with no real reason. And then she whispered to me that she said, as she's crying and hugging me, saying, I love you. That was the first time she said it. And she used to tell her friends and coworkers and whatever that we were just roommates, which was something that hurt me. And it was, she moved from the state of Washington to Philly to be with me. It sent me $1,000 to get the apartment, secure the apartment for the two of us, before a few weeks before she even moved. And we had only met each other one night, and we met each other on Tinder, and we had one night, and then she moved across the whole country, got rid of her cats, got rid of her apartment, everything, just on a whim, moved to be with me, right? It was a strange occurrence, but then something similar happened when I moved to Georgia with Mimi, but in a whole different way. So, okay, let me backtrack. That's not.
Yeah, I didn't pay for anything. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I just paid for my own stuff. But okay, so she is someone who went to. She lived in the hood as a young child, and for whatever reason, her mother was approached by someone where she was sent her to live at the Milton Hershey School in Pennsylvania. And it's a boarding school, and she lived there with a bunch of other kids. They have different, whatever headmasters, or I don't even know what they're called, teachers or professors there, but it's just the kids live amongst themselves, girls with the girls and boys with the boys, whatever. Actually, I think she was only with all girls for a long period of her life. So that, I think, leads into the MK Ultra programming. I believe that would be part of it. Now, when we start to look at when she was older, she joined the military. She was part of the intelligence community in the military, and her ex-husband, was in the military as well, and then they got divorced, and she was in Philly for her friends, because Milton Hershey School was in Pennsylvania. They were in the county that I was in, so she was there conveniently for one of them was about to get married in a few months, so it was like a wedding rehearsal.
It's interesting that she was a female in that school. When it was, I was just kind of perusing because I hadn't heard of that school, but it was originally started as a school and a home for orphan boys in 1909.
Yeah, well, it was apparently a girls section and a boys section, because
now, yeah, probably.
Yeah, and the kids from all over the country would go there. So she was military intelligence, and not that she was all that high ranking. I don't know. I don't know the full truth, because this is where things really start to get weird. So now, like I said, she moved from Washington State to Philly to be with me, sent me $1,000. So, I put up money as well, but I couldn't afford the whole, first, last, and security deposit by myself. So she sent money ahead of time to do that. So there was all of that went into it. So when we were together, like I said, she would tell everybody that we were just roommates. And that was weird enough. But on the weekends, literally almost every weekend, she would travel all across the country to hang out with friends from that school, the Milton Hershey School. Texas, she went to often. Florida, she would go to. Connecticut, she would go. She went back to Washington a few times. She literally traveled. This is what she was telling me anyway. I didn't really question it, because I was trying to learn how to blindly trust, and that was something I had an issue with my daughter's mom. I didn't have trust, so that was a big step for me, allowing that. But it's weird, because if it was like a sex kitten operation, that she would go to these different places randomly for a weekend, because that's what she did when we met. She was randomly where I was for that weekend, and we had met on Tinder, and then she moved a few weeks later, moved to be with me. So that was strange. Now, she is the one I smoked her bong. She had a very big bong, and I hit the bong and I held it too long, and my crown chakra popped open. And maybe it wasn't just my crown chakra, maybe it was the memory hole that was on me popped open. Then we started doing psychedelics together. Now we experienced.
And she's in the military at this time.
No. So she had gotten out of the military. Okay. Before I get into the psychedelics and that, she had gotten out of the military. Her and her husband divorced because he was cheating on her or whatever. This is a story she told me. So she was then, when she was working where I lived in Philly, she worked at the Navy base. So again, she was working alongside the military, but she was doing some job of like, she did the tours when new recruits would come in every single week. She would do tours and do testing and different stuff like that. Then about like 3 months in, turned out that the military shouldn't be running that position. So they fired her, but the public company that was, or whatever, the private company that was non-military, that was then hosting that job position, then hired her and paid her $10,000 more per year than what she was already getting. So it was a very strange thing. It just happened. She didn't actually leave anything. She just went from working for one company to the other, making much more money. So it was very strange. Again, she was leaving every weekend. She was former military intelligence too. She was very, healthy and athletic, and she was very intelligent. So, like I was saying, we shared dreams together. It was the strangest thing where one specific time we were watching Rick and Morty. We were high, we were watching Rick and Morty. We went to bed, and then we had this dream that like some kind of shoe. It was her and I were holding on to each other, and we were running, and like something was about to step on us, and then like we both woke up at the same time when the shoe stepped on us, and when that happened, we both kind of we came to, and we like looked at each other, and I was like, whoa, this is so weird. I just had this dream. And I said it to her, and she started laughing. She goes, that was my dream too. And we had gone to bed. We kind of fell asleep because we were so high, so we were in like this stupor, and she just laughed herself to sleep, because we just shared this dream. So that was something that was weird that happened. But then we started dabbling into psychedelics, and she kind of led me into it, which is why I think that she had to be removed from the situation from their point of view, the handlers, because she popped open my crown chakra and my memory hold, and then she led me into psychedelics, which then had me remind her what was happening or has happened to her, which then it was like, okay, then we got too close and she was falling in love with me, which wasn't supposed to happen. And that's why, like, really why she had to move on. So when we're doing the psychedelics together, I started to see that she was on these ships, that when I was walking down the middle of the ship that I say was so wide that you couldn't see one end or the other, and then in front of me and behind me were just walls of people strapped all the way up, like, I don't know, 7 to 10 rows of people just strapped on the walls, and like everyone I ever knew. Well, she was one of them. And I hadn't known her before that, to my understanding. But when I saw her and I told her about that, that like triggered something in her, and she became distant. And then it was like 2 weeks later, she's like, I have to move out. And she moved out within like a week, just like a town over. She was just gone. And she finally said she loved me when she hugged me the night she moved out. So it wasn't any ill will. Like I said, we had a great relationship. She just moved out, just out of the blue, kind of. That's what it really just seemed like. It seemed like things were fine, and then she just moved out. So I had my suspicions, and then all of a sudden, she moved to Colorado shortly thereafter. Again, moving way across the country, and started to work for a hospital. And it was like she just, I don't know how she would get these jobs, making as much money as she did, as quickly as she did, being interviewed across country, not having any experience in the field that she's going into, but then she's getting into it, with her background of that boarding school.
Yeah, that school's very interesting.
Yeah.
The little bits that I just read, it's just very interesting. It's free for underprivileged children, but the teachers make gajillions of dollars a year, and the school spends gajillions of dollars a year. So it's very strange off the get-go.
Yeah. So,
yeah,
with that background, with the background of the military intelligence,
I'm sure they're state funded.
yeah, well,
Yeah, or federally funded.
or privately funded.
Yeah, or privately funded. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
or combo.
yeah, there's so much to it that it's very strange. But then I started putting things together. I was like, oh, she was my handler, because different things would happen at different times. Not when she was there. That's the thing. When she was there, none of the things happened that I talk about in the episode about the things that were trying to make me paranoid. It was after she left, that's when the things started happening, because I think that she was probably just telling them what was going on, that maybe she had uh, cameras set up around the house. I don't know. I'm not suggesting she did, but I wouldn't be surprised if she did. We were sharing the living space, so she would have plenty of time and access to everything. It's not like she didn't have a key. I mean, it was her house too, so, or her apartment as well. So there's just a lot of things that go with it, but I really think that she was probably my handler, because, when I was just talking to Leslie before we got on air and I'm showing her my implants, uh, I was like, "Is this something you're familiar with?" And she goes, "Oh, that looks like it's probably from the secret space program or super soldier program type of implants where it's humans." And I was like, "Yeah, that's what I tell people about." And it was 18 years ago is when I had my UFO sighting, and it takes about 20 years for the memories to wear off. Well, mine started wearing off when I did the psychedelics and meditation around like 15 or 16 years. If like it was too early. And there's also things that happened on Twitter right at the beginning of COVID. So I had my first Twitter name was at Philly Faux for Faux, and 50 Cent had posted something about when Trump first mentioned the deep state and Fauci was next to him, and he made that face. It was a famous little thing that was going on. 50 Cent posted that photo, and I commented on it and said something about that Fauci knew what the deep state was, and I had all these people comment on it. Well, there were two people specifically, I don't know who they were, but two commenters specifically said my name, Todd, and I only had maybe like 10 followers at the time, because I wasn't active on Twitter and I used it for sports because I was just waking up. And they said, one guy said, "Todd, it looks like your programming is wearing off." Like, to try to get me scared and paranoid. This is the types of things that would occur. And there's also been different times where I have had strange occurrences happen in my physical life that have made me tried to make me feel like I was paranoid, that like scare me into acting a certain way. Like I said in there, in the interview, that I had different points where I saw people who I then saw, or I saw people up in Philly who then I saw down here in Georgia just a few weeks later, or a few months later when I moved, and they were very strange people who, it was just like, how could that person, it's like, I know that person from somewhere, but how do I know them? Like, a lot of stuff like that would happen. A lot of stuff would happen where I was experiencing things like my daughter's window being opened, and also pink fingerprints being on the ceiling of my bathroom, my car having the windows down when it's raining, and I mean, just different stuff like that was very weird. I actually had to have the police come out, and they checked everything, and the guy's like, "No, your house is clean. Like, you seem like a legit person." I didn't seem crazy to him at all. I had footprints that shouldn't have been in my house that were somehow in my house, footprints that were too small for me. And this is what I went on the confessionals and told Tony Merkel about the the letter that was sent to my house that wasn't addressed. But again, he's never put out that episode. Maybe he has at this point. I don't know. I don't think so. He's never contacted me and told me he's put it out, and it's not something I've ever seen on his Rolodex of shows. So I got that anonymous letter that said, uh, calm down. It's that this world's effed up, but it's not as crazy as you think it was, as you're saying it is on social media. This didn't have a return address on it, so somebody put this in my mailbox, my apartment mail slot, because we shared it. So somehow they got into my hallway, the lobby of the apartment complex, and put this into my mailbox. I don't know how that would happen, but is what happened because it was in there. And it didn't have my apartment number on it. It just said my name on it. And that's all that was written on the envelope. So obviously someone got in there and put it in there. I had that letter, and it looked like someone typed it up on their cell phone and then printed it out somehow. Yeah, that was strange. And again, I don't know how that happened. There was a whole bunch of things that happened. And then one thing that happened down here is when I had that interview with Nathaniel Gillis, is I came back to my car after work, and I had the rubber. So I'm going to try to pull up the picture here. I can't find it on my photo album right now, which is okay. Here it is. So let me share my screen. Let me pull this up, and then I'll share my screen, because this is something that was really strange. So you can see here that there's this little indent. So I came out to my car and I noticed this right away. This is like right over where the lock is. Let's see. Yeah. So you can see here's the handle where the lock would be, right? Is like right inside the handle right here. And there's this little indent. Now, how could that be? That this indent just happens to be there. It's something that was extremely noticeable. As soon as I walked up to my car, I saw it. And it wasn't there before. Well, I work in the hood, and next to my work is this motel hotel type thing. So you guys can just see that it's indented. So the way that I got it unindented is I put my window all the way down, and I got my pocket knife, and I just popped it back out. So it's still messed up a little bit. Now I'm sharing this just because I'm calling out these people for what they're doing. I'm not here to deceive or lie to anybody. This is not something that I did. I didn't even put any of this out till now, because if I would have put it out right away, it would have seemed set up or something. So I just really want everyone to know that this is something that I experienced, and this is how it operates. And it goes with the secret space programming, the super soldier programming and the secret space program. And this is how I'm able to affect my reality through meditation. Like I told people, I've popped lights, I've broken tree branches, I had some kind of board hit my windshield. That's because I've been in the super soldier programming, and I've been breaking free from it. When I tell Andy all the crazy dreams that I had on Worship in the Storm, and how I feel like there's some device in my brain that's weaved in and out that I'm getting rid of, like that's all part of it. And I have to release it step by step so that people can really take in this experience. This is a real thing. This is what I've really experienced it. And I don't want to make money off of it. I don't want to seem like I'm insane. But this is just the facts. Now, like I was saying, where I work is the hood, like straight up in the hood in Savannah. And next to it is this hotel motel that was closed down for years. Nobody did nothing with it. 2 months after I start working at this place, then all of a sudden someone buys it. And I think that they're going to fix it up because they're trimming down all these trees. I mean, there's just overgrown trees all over the property, not even trees, just like those junk things that are just overgrown at all the different fences and what have you. So they had a lot of landscaping going on, getting rid of all that. That's all they did. That's the only construction they did. Now, to understand how intelligence agencies work, what you would do if you're going to have undercover intelligence officers be around an area is have them be homeless, right? Wouldn't that make sense that you would have people pretend to be homeless because then they can just blend in? Like, that just makes logical sense that if you're an intelligence agency or a military group, that if you're going to have undercover people, you would have them pretend to be homeless. Well, what this hotel motel does now is they shelter homeless people, apparently. Okay, so that's not too crazy into itself, but the way that they could have gone to my car while I was working, while my car is in a locked lot, is they have one building that has a roof that isn't very far from over the fence. Someone that's in shape could have easily hopped over the fence from the roof to the back of that parking lot, slim jimmed it, and did whatever. I don't know. I never really looked to see if they implanted something or if they took something out. I don't really care because all I know is that they're trying to scare me and listen in on things and find out how I know the things that I know. They don't trust that I'm just in contact with Jesus. They think that I'm working with somebody. You know, I was in the queue thing for a while as well, and I was tweeting things out that I probably shouldn't have, that could have been some kind of trigger to someone else at some point, some kind of, all those different strings of code and all. And I probably shouldn't have been doing that because I don't know what I was actually saying and who that could have actually triggered. So they were very much watching and aware of my presence online. I already told you about what happened with my Twitter. When Biden was inaugurated, I deleted my Twitter, but at first I tweeted out like, "Okay, I'm going to shut down. I'm going to delete my Twitter app, but I'll be back." Less than an hour after I tweeted that out, they suspended my account indefinitely, which is why I needed a new account. When I started a new account on Twitter, they deleted that right away. But the account that I have now is my backup account to the first account that I had. And they knew that because I was tweeting it out on the same device. So they allowed me to keep the same Twitter that they already were in. They didn't allow me to get a new one. So when I talk about that, I know like I'm shadow banned and weird things happen. Like I know this because of my experience of these different things. And I don't really particularly care about talking about it too often because it is what it is. There's no way around it. If I want to use their things, I have to go through their stupid rules and initiations, and they want to keep me contained because my words are true and they don't want my truth being out there. It's just, it gets frustrating, but once you understand that there's nothing you can do about it, you just have to keep playing along because ultimately God is in charge and God doesn't want me to get to everybody just yet. God only wants me to reach certain people right now. So that's why things happen that they are. And I'm okay with that. I don't need to reach a ton of people and I don't need to know why they're doing it. I understand why they're doing it. They think that well, now they know Mimi, do you remember all the packages that went missing or never arrived or arrived like 3 days after it said we were getting alerts that it was here and it would come like 2-3 days later, like every single package?
Oh, I don't
remember
the
thing?
China package.
Yeah,
never
that was
showing
one
up.
of them. Yeah,
Actually, it did show up in the form of a swan necklace, a black swan necklace, instead of a giant backyard thing that we ordered.
Yeah, well, there was a 2 to 3 month period. Mimi has a terrible memory, so maybe she wasn't the best person to ask.
Yeah, definitely not.
But there was a 2 to 3 month period shortly after Biden was inaugurated where every single package that I got, unless it was from Amazon. What are you stepping away?
I got 5 minutes.
Okay, so unless it was from Amazon, it was coming 2 to 3 days after it was already shipped. And I remember complaining about that to you, so I don't like.
Yeah, we've ordered so many things. And
Yeah.
it just all depended on where they were coming from. But
Yeah.
seemed like lots of things came from China during COVID.
Yeah, but anyway, it was, my packages, I would get an email saying it arrived from the USPS, and it wasn't here. It was just a lot of weird things happened with that. So that's just all part of it, that they were suspecting I was some kind of terrorist, and I'm someone who has terroristic threats on his record from being 14 when I told a teacher I knew where his car was. So they gave me terroristic threats for that. So they were assuming I was some kind of terrorist, and they've been monitoring me. So I think that there's probably been multiple factions of intelligence agencies and military programs that have been monitoring me. And the more vocal I am about it, the less hold they have on me, which is why I am here now exposing what has happened to me. And I just know that this is time for me to expose it, because this is what Jesus is leading me to. So, there's a lot there for you guys all to just take in. It's stuff I haven't wanted to talk about because of, how crazy it is, but it's just, it was time for me to release all of it, so to speak. All right. Well, I think that is going to do it here for us. Make sure you go check out the Patreon. Sign up if you want to. Go check out all of our guest stuff. Again, all the links will be in the description. If you want to be part of the Bible study, send an email with the subject Bible study to the Great Chakra Awakening 777@gmail.com, and I will send you the link to sign up. And we can close out with a prayer. Do you have anything before we close out?
I don't. I literally have 5 minutes to get the Bible study.
Okay. So, all right, let's close out with a prayer. Dear God, we want to thank you for providing us with all the opportunities that you have provided for us. We want to thank you with providing us with this connection. And we want to thank you for creating the space and time that we are in so that we may be able to do things like we did today and expose the truth and bring forth our experiences and just really try to get the word out there to anyone and everyone who is in need. We want to ask for your protection and guidance for anyone who is listening to this, anyone who may need it and not even know it. Can you please guide them and protect them and bring them back to your truth and understanding? And can you please just show us the way, the truth, and the life? In Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen. All right. So that's going to do it, everybody. We will talk to you later. Bye.